Well, welcome back to Planet 13. This is Cultivated Live. I'm Jay, Krista, Jeremy. And Jon from Surfside. I can tell because he's got the gear.
Yeah.
I knew that before anyway. Jon, for those that do not know, give us the 1 minute on Surfside, and then we're going to dive in because I got a lot of questions.
So simplification is we work with retailers and brands in the cannabis industry, and we help them advertise. A lot of customers have different goals, whether it's customer acquisition, whether it's drive online sales, in-store sales. We've been in the business since 2018. Just recently launched a really new product that we're really excited about, which is our commerce media solution, which is now, rather than targeting people on the BuzzFeeds and the USA Todays of the world, now we have the ability to target and serve ads to people while they're in the shopping experience. So on the e-commerce sites or in-store menus. And so that's what Surfside does, and we help facilitate that for our advertisers.
There's a word for that.
Smart.
No, I meant they're shopping with intent, right? They're
at the point of purchase.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the commerce media offering is really cool because now we're able to engage with shoppers during the e-commerce experience.
Yeah.
But it's like a great way for the brands to get access to, there's 1,000 SKUs and within a store, and you can now have the top placement, or you can just have a little bit more exposure than you would with the normal menu experience.
Yeah.
Qualified customers.
These are the words I'm looking for, but Chris is the one that actually has them. What were you doing before Surfside?
So I've always been in advertising, actually. Like, oddly enough, I was in like another kind of vice category when I started, which was hunting and fishing.
Uh-huh.
And so when we started, actually, like, this is when like Google Ads was just doing the text ads at the bottom of the screen. And so we went out to all the hunting and fishing sites and said, hey, rather than having little blue text links in Google display boxes, would you rather have ads for John Deere and Remington Arms? And so we went out and we worked with a bunch of what we call hook and bullet. So hunting and fishing companies.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, hook and bullet.
Hook and bullet.
It was,
I like that.
So it was a hook and bullet. I was like, but it was interesting. Like, we went out and we acquired a ton of different websites in the hook and bullet space. And so that was fishing, hunting, farming, agriculture. Then it was like mountain sports and power sports. But then we brought really endemic advertisers. This was like when ad networks were a big thing. And so that's where I started off in the advertising world. But like, now I'm in another space where we're talking about, hey, you can't, Google and these mainstream platforms don't allow cannabis as an advertising vertical, so there's a niche for us there, just like there was a niche for us to provide advertisers an outlet for a digital advertising experience on these sites. And I've been doing some form of advertising since then. So.
Since birth.
Since birth. Yeah.
How's business?
Business is good. I say that, like, no matter how the industry goes up and down, we're still at a point where there's still a ton of market share for us to continue to grow. And so yes, I really like the commerce media solution because we pay the retailers for access to this inventory. So it's a new way for them to generate margin, generate revenue. It's all margin for them. And so it takes what used to be a cost center in their site and how they're maintaining it and who's, whatever the expenses are involved in that. And now we can create revenue around that, so it becomes a profit center rather than a cost center. So that's been a really good component for us, area of growth. But at the same time, we've always focused on performance and measurement. We want to make sure that the ads drive sales, are actually driving incremental sales and lift. And so when people do cut budget, which they have done, they tend to leave our solutions on because they know that it's driving results for them. And so that's always been a pillar for us. When we started the company, we really focused on measurement and attribution.
And it's a very the regulatory environment for advertising for cannabis brands and retailers is like, it's convoluted to say the least, and there's not a ton of options, I think, but also there's a huge need. What? More than you like. There's one option for sure that we like to talk about, and that's Surfside. But it is interesting, and like, have you thought about how the business model changes if and how and when the regulatory environment opens up a bit?
Yeah, we thought, like, when we started the company, we didn't start it as a cannabis company. We very much started Surfside because we saw a problem with identity and first-party data. People really, what was happening in identity is people didn't want to use third-party data sets anymore. People were taking more control over their customer data. There was new privacy laws that were coming into play that we've seen in in Europe with GDPR that might affect if we go to a market. Hey, can you go to Germany? Like, yes, we could go to Germany, but there's different. Not only are there different cannabis advertising laws, there's different just privacy laws in Europe, and so we knew a lot of that stuff was coming to the U.S. And one of the main things that our last company was really focused on location-based data. So as people walk around with phones in their pockets, we were able to know what type of behaviors they were doing. Like, oh, they go to Starbucks every day, they love coffee in the morning. That was really good, but it didn't help us understand what type of coffee they were buying, or if they were buying a TV or an HDMI cord when we saw them at Best Buy. So we wanted to get closer to the point of sale, and we wanted to be able to provide a solution that had more insight into the full customer journey, which is why we started Surfside. And as an element of that, it solved for a lot of the complexities that existed in cannabis. Like, we knew identity, we had a history and location data, which was another compliance factor. And so the ability there to kind of bring all this together solved for a lot of issues with getting scalability and getting access to this type of inventory. I think that a lot of people over time have kind of figured that out as well. Like, programmatic advertising is a way to get access and way to get awareness, but I think that the difference is going to be how can you use personalization, and how can you use the correct audiences and give them the right tools as far as what's working, what's not working. And now we're talking about better inventory with the commerce media solution. So we've constantly been evolving how that relates to what happens when Facebook and Google come into the mix. I think you can look at like a Twitter or X. So like when those platforms were opened and became available, our clients still wanted to use the integrations they had with us, because we've already integrated into the point of sale. We already have their customer data set, so we can push segments to these platforms. And so we look at them as net new media channels rather than a new media vendor or opportunity. And so our platform allows them to buy on these solutions, but then also measure everything back using the existing pipes that we've already put in place to make sure that, hey, is X driving your sales? Is it Google? Is it Facebook? Is it Surfside? Is it Weedmaps? Is it Leafly? And we have that ability to measure across everything.
Smart.
How do you measure the success of a campaign? Like, do you have something proprietary, or is it just like marketing 101 stuff?
It's a mixture of both, right? There's like some basic stuff that you want to have in place, but I think like the simplest explanation is we're integrating into the points of purchase. So if a sale happens at the e-commerce store, we have code on site that says, hey, this person was served an ad, and that same person then showed up and made a purchase. And like, a digital purchase is using a digital ID, right? Where if it's a sale in store, you may see someone sees an ad, but then goes to the site, doesn't complete the purchase, but then walks into the actual location, makes a purchase. But when you go into a store, let's say Planet 13, they're taking your email and they're taking your phone number. And then us as a business, this is where some of the uniqueness comes in for what we can do versus what's kind of the basic attribution, is that we can then onboard an offline identity, like an email or a phone number, and then we can associate that back to all the devices that they own. So that's where we talk about like owning like a customer graph, an identity graph, to be able to onboard offline data sets as well. Yeah. And that's a unique component that I think we have.
One of the things that I think is like really interesting in what you're offering versus kind of where people have been going, specifically if we look at like California, Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, Massachusetts, all of those areas, a lot of the retailers are actually not as much focused on new customer acquisition, but creating additional touch points for the customers that are already their best customers. And I see this like worlds coming together in those, specifically in those types of markets where the customer is needing additional touch points. We want to think about how we drive additional transactions in a year. And so there's a certain amount of complexity that's being added to their business, or like deeper understanding of who the customer is. Talk to me about who the customer was like as a retailer, what they were focused on 2 years ago versus what you think that they're going to be focused on this year.
Yeah, so I think that we've done a pretty good job recently, more so of like separating our retention campaigns from our acquisition campaigns. To your point, like there are definitely customers and retailers and brands that are more focused on, hey, it's a tight market, we want to retain all of our business. We know customer acquisition costs are higher than retention costs, so we want to focus on retention. I do think that there has been a shift for a lot of acquisition campaigns and putting more budget into the customer acquisition focus. I think there's some really cool stuff around what's become available more readily within like I hate to bring up AI. But, you know,
Then
but,
don't. No, just kidding.
But like there are some cool things that like we're playing around with, but more so to like help you identify who your customers are, like
Patterns.
Yeah, and so we can load up. What we've been doing is we've been playing around with like loading up data sets of people's first party customer data and saying, hey, these are your most valuable customers. This is the type of ads that they are going to engage with. And so it's really important as we look at like self-service and create something that's easy for people to just say, hey, tell me what I need to know from a strategic perspective, from a customer perspective. Everything we do is with a lens of advertising. And so ours is our thoughts on how do we build this in a way to make it easy for people to now activate media campaigns that so it's great to know all these insights about my customers, but now what do I do
with it?
Yeah, and so our thing is like, hey, we want to tell you and then help you do it and finish that next step so that you can continue to repeat and learn from there. And I think I would say that that's going to be a cool aspect of 2024. We're obviously going to be focusing a lot with brands this year. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for them that didn't exist a year or two ago as it relates to these different ad offerings, and I think that's what I'm most excited about.
Amazing.
I also see a really different conversation happening right now in more mature markets between brands and retailers and collaboration of what that looks like, in being like maybe having, as a brand focus, having the number of distribution points maybe was really important 2 years ago, but having the right distribution points with the right partners to be able to make that happen. I think there have been underlying narratives of like that specifically in California, saying how do we create good partnership to be able to support each other to do this. And we come from Canada, and like that's definitely a missed opportunity at times in that market. And so I think what you're talking about in the offerings that you're thinking about can create better partnerships where you close the loop with your best customers.
Yeah.
It's giving them more insight into alluding to the non-payment issues that some of these companies are dealing with, but understanding where your products are selling, understanding where you believe that you're underselling and there's opportunity, like, hey, I'm the 10th best edible in store, but I know that if I were to get to the 5th, I could triple sales, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of
What's
opportunity
that, like
there.
bell curve?
Yeah, and so like that is the type of information that we have to provide these advertisers that can say like, hey, let's not only look at return on ad spend, let's try to get your market share up double. Right, let's get you as the 3rd highest edibles, because that, like, yes, naturally that will provide a strong return on ad spend for you, but sometimes you just want to buy market share and then hold it, because the lifetime value of that is going to be more value to you over time than maybe what you're spending on a true return in the next 2 months. And so there's other ways for us to look at this information. I think people are getting a lot more sophisticated, and it definitely creates better partnerships with the retailers that are more open to facilitating these type of conversations and more open to sharing that type of info with their brand partners.
Yeah, even things like if you provide edibles and you're offering certain flavors, what next flavor should you be maybe expanding into, or even if there's other categories that your product is consistently being purchased with, having that level of insight to say, are we actually going to leverage our own brand awareness with the customers to potentially put 2 products together? So, yes.
John,
Yes.
I appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
And the work, innovative work and groundbreaking work and important work that Surfside does, because I know it means a lot, certainly to the brands and to the retailers, and with the new move as well, it's going to be really important to help all of Krista's clients. Really appreciate you stopping by. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.